我同意，我真的同意，你是老大，你是老大。Hey everyone, this is Chris. Welcome back to the channel. So I figured out the way to be successful in China is just agree with everything President Xi says and tell him he's the boss man. That's all it takes. And in fact, it seems like the same way with the markets. Take a look at this. So there were a couple screenshots this past week, and if you don't read Chinese, it's okay. Don't worry. It may not matter because this stuff may not be real anyway. and who's to say what's real and not real? I oftentimes I just feel like we're living in the Matrix, and it is what it is. But you can choose to live in Matrix land, and in fact, you can make a lot of money in Matrix land. But there's a lot of risk, right? And the reason why I'm calling it Matrix Land is because essentially this is real. There was an unverified screenshot, which I just showed you guys, and essentially caused the markets to rally for $450 billion. I mean, read the headline, unverified post about a China reopening plan, right? $450 billion is like, oh yeah, let's get excited. And screenshot of no known origin. So this is the world that we live in. Make a bunch of money, go ahead and live the dream. But do understand that we are not in control. The Matrix is in control, and in fact, it's China. It turns out that they're serious about the COVID stuff, so I guess we're not reopening. This just came out recently, and I'm looking at this thing going, oh my God. And it just feels like a, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me, fool me thrice, shame on me again, fool me 4 times. I guess it's still shame on me, or my shame? I'm confused. So that's why it goes back to when in doubt, just agree with President Xi and tell him he's the boss man, and you'll be successful in this market. Now, as it turns out, though, it's really interesting. There is a sort of secret war brewing between the China and the U.S., and it's really quite interesting. It's actually a battle over rules, and this is what I want to talk with you about today. Not only are our markets ruled by screenshots of unknown origin, which can lead to $450 billion of wealth. So yes, if you want to play along, I mean, you can make money, but I have no idea what's going to happen from day to day. That's just sort of the markets we're in. It's basically gambling at this point. The other thing too, with this sort of war, or technology war, I should call it, between China and USA, the basic gist, I'll give you the basic gist of it, is that we're fighting over technology standards. So this one particular example would be, what are the size of shipping crates, right? And then if we decide the size of shipping crates to be a certain size, then we have to design ships to be a certain size. That's the example of ships. Let's think of some other example. So let's say I set the standard of fuel, right, gasoline, to be a certain kind of fuel, and then I start building all cars to be X amount of fuel, then all cars coming down the pipeline will be X, right? Or Wi-Fi. What is a Wi-Fi standard? If I set Wi-Fi standard to be X, then suddenly all routers and stuff need to be compatible with that. The point is that it's actually really quite interesting. China is getting more aggressive in sort of, and I'm not saying good or bad, it is what it is, because the USA would obviously want to be aggressive in these things too, is just setting the standard. Think of it this way, guys, is if you're old enough to remember, say, VHS, Betamax, and Laserdisc DVDs, if you remember all of these things, there was a fight to be what was going to be the standard of how we play media. Be it, go with music, be it DVDs. That's a video. It would be CD, 8-tracks, cassette tapes, Sony Walkman, MP3s, MP4s, this kind of stuff. So international standards is actually really quite important. And again, China's taken a more active role in this. And moreover, the USA is sort of pushing back. And I'm not saying good or bad. I'm just saying this is what's happening because there's a lot of money in this stuff. And the basic gist of it is, think of it this way. If there's a company who makes a said format, we'll just say Wi-Fi. But let's say Wi-Fi 6G, right? Whenever that comes out, or 7G, whatever. And your company in your country sets the whole standard, be it Huawei, right? Be it a Baidu, right? I'm saying Chinese companies, or let's say in the USA, maybe it's going to be Google, maybe it's going to be Apple, whatever. Whatever company sets that standard, then all the other companies you have to follow, essentially, right? And this is worth quite a bit of money. And how do we set what the standards of Wi-Fi are going to be? These kind of things. And so it's actually really, really quite interesting. One thing that's going on as well is talking about sort of the tech war with U.S. and China. Biden and the team over there have been like, yo, we're going to start cutting off chips to China, and we don't want them stealing our tech. And I think what this is all about, it's always about money, of course, money and control. And obviously, China's supporting the war in Russia, and so we're not too thrilled about that. I'm sure you guys understand these things. The thing is, though, is I just want you to point out how there's more than just what we see in terms of what's happening just here, right? With say cutting off the chips. There's a lot more going on because I think this whole regulation thing about setting technological standards is really, really important. The other thing too I want you to consider as well, and sort of like, and this again, and I want to really emphasize is like, there's always going to be winners and losers in these kind of things. But the question I want to ask you is, how do we want to determine who the winners and losers are? So in regards to something like China or the U.S., in USA, I would pose this question to you guys. Do you think our tech market is a free market, or do you think the government picks winners and losers? And I'm not giving you the answer. I'm just saying, what do you think? Because I think it's an interesting question. So for example, say we'll go back to say Betamax, right? Betamax versus VHS, or even the Wi-Fi standard that we use. Is and does the best technology always win, right? Let's talk about cars, right? Do the best and most technically advanced cars always win? I would argue not necessarily, because the free market certainly matters, right? Because consumers are going to choose X, but sometimes governments come in and regulate and sort of give advantages to certain companies. Now, I would say the US does do that to a lesser extent, though, than China. I would argue that, and this is certainly the argument over at the Carnegie Foundation, they're making the same case, and I would totally agree with it, that in China, the government can certainly pick winners and losers of their companies and then try to boost that company's standard to essentially being a world standard where all the other companies have to compete. It's actually really quite interesting. You can see this. If you want to read more of that stuff, it's Global Competition for Leadership Positions in Standards Development Organizations. So another way to think about it this way is, guys, as well, which is kind of a funny way to think about it. I remember when I was a kid, and it was like the NBA players decided that they're going to start playing the Olympics, and we call this the Dream Team. And some of the debates going on were like, which rules are we going to play basketball in? Are we going to play like international rules? And then where are we going to put the 3-point line? What about, traveling? How are we going to, handle all of the rules? And, rules will give certain types of play styles more advantages, right? So like, I'll give you this example. It was a kind of an interesting one, was like, should we allow dunking? Because like, if you can't dunk the basketball, that would actually give a bigger advantage to international teams. That was a really interesting thing. I'm just giving you one example, but the idea of like, how do we set standards is sort of where the battle is right now. And it's more than just, trade wars and stuff like that. I think it's really astounding. One thing I will say and I was making a joke earlier about with China, it is a real thing though. If you just play along with the leadership, agree with everything they say, because they make the rules, I mean, that's essentially how it is, and you'll be okay. If you don't play by the rules, this is something that just came out recently. You can see here is the headline. China probes, was it People's Bank of China Deputy Governor Fan amid anti-graft campaign. Who knows if this is real or not? I have no idea. But the government in China can just make up any random crap about you that they want, be it real or unreal, and just throw you away. The same way that happened with Jack Ma over at Baidu, right? Jack Ma wanted to build a school. They're like, yo, you're not going to build any school, challenge our power. And he basically just disappeared. And so this is the risk of investing in China right now. Because I know oftentimes people ask me about the Chinese stocks and stuff. And, when you see these kind of things of like, headlines of unverified post, about China reopening and the markets go like crazy, there's just no way to verify. And you're not trading on fundamentals at all. And I understand that you might look at some numbers in China, but we don't even know if the numbers coming out of whatever companies are real. Another thing that we don't know is like when they release GDP numbers, the amount of data that have been coming out of China has also been lessening since President Xi took power. So you have all of these things going on. And you can certainly make the case. You can say, Chris, this is peak fear time. When it's peak fear, it's time to jump in. You can make that case. If I were a better person or better betting, that's a better way to say it, better at betting, I would think if I'm going to take a risk at this time, I would more likely take a risk in England, which certainly could be falling apart. I should make a separate video on England. There's some crazy stuff going on over there. But at least I know that I have some semblance of what's right, transparency over there, right? I mean, they actually can just remove their leader if like people are like, yo, Prime Minister Truss, you're no good. We're going to get Sunak and something like where the Xi, you can't. And I just think this whole world that we're in is so crazy. So anyway, just wanted to share my thoughts on this with you guys. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this thing. Did you know about sort of this fight for technological standards and how important it is? I'm telling you guys, this is the big money. And you're going to see a lot more competition between the China and the USA on who controls like where tech is going, say Wi-Fi 7, Wi-Fi 8, these kind of things, and which companies will benefit from said things. So thanks again for watching, everyone. Hope this was helpful for you, and I'll catch you in the next video.